For Sid Kagenou, he didn't really care too much for the guards or for their torture methods. His mind was focused elsewhere, and he had trained his body to be rather resistant to any form of torture, but of course he knew he had to put on a show. He didn't want to give them any more reason to suspect him of anything, even though he hadn't done anything worth suspecting at all. No, his focus was on Alexia, his current predicament. How had he even allowed himself to get involved in this situation? Had he really been that careless? Of course, it wasn't because he looked down on Alexia or anything. In fact, she was quite powerful. For all the crap that she gave herself, honestly, she was far more than what many people would ever give her credit. So the fact that someone kidnapped her, took her down in any form of combat or any real meaningful battle, was something to be of significance. Though, at the same time, he also lamented in the fact that he didn't have his shadow garden at the moment. It had been close to 2.5 years now since he'd last seen Alpha and the other shadows. They were all off, scattered to different parts of the world doing their own thing. Could have really been useful right about now. For 5 days he had to endure torture, putting on a show for Xenon and his crew, acting as though he were weak and feeble, but still showed the guts of heart. No, perhaps in the beginning he would have gone for the full theatrics, peeing his pants, acting like he didn't know any better. But he actually showed some fight, a little bit of heart. He wasn't one to be trifled with, but he still showed that he was clearly outclassed. Meanwhile, in the midst of everything, there was Alexia's older sister, Iris. She was a part of an elite group, a group known as the 12 Knights of Round. Of course, within this world, there were hierarchies to say the least. Taking the royalty out of it, when it came to military might, all you needed to know is that just below the Justice League, there was a particular group. 12 specific individuals. They made up the 12 Knights of Round. You could say that they were a tier below when it came to the Justice League. They were like, what's the best way of putting it? Something akin to a vice admiral. Someone just below the big boys. You see, this world was massive. There were many different territories, many different countries, all of whom required the attention of the Justice League, as Midgar wasn't just looking for its own dominance, but they were looking to expand. Because of that, the Justice League weren't even in the country of Midgar at the time, and even if they were, this wasn't a situation they would handle unless they felt like they had to. So, when a situation of this magnitude took place, this was where the 12 Knights of Round came into play, and Iris just so happened to be one of them. This was basically a group of promising individuals. If Sid had to take a guess, out of the 12 Knights of Round, it would be likely to assume that anyone in that group were more than likely going to be the next Justice League in the event that any member were to ever be defeated or killed or to go into any form of retirement. So that was a testament to just how much power she had, and the power of the group in total. The 12 Knights of Round pretty much operated as the main working force for the country of Midgar, usually with 2 per province, a give and take a situation or two. They were always on the move for the most part. But for Iris, she came back to the capital specifically because of her sister. And it wasn't just Iris that was involved. No, even the big 3 were being called into action, as Helena, Laura, and Jessica had specifically been chosen by Superman to help oversee the rescue operation. They were aspiring to be a part of the 12 Knights of Round, and it was more than likely that they were going to be making the cut. It was always a rotating door. Just because you made it into the 12, it didn't mean that your spot was guaranteed. No, not by any means. If someone wanted to, they could challenge for the spot. And these girls, once they graduated from the academy, that was probably going to be their next course of action. From there, they'd probably go right into their mentorship. Helena would probably go to her uncle. Jessica probably with Hal in the Yellow Lantern Corps. And for Laura, obviously under her father, Superman. So it just gave you a roundabout idea of the system and how it worked, and the best way of climbing to the top when it came to power. Safe to say, the capital was on high alert. Martial law had all but been declared at this point, and outside of going to classes, the students at Midgar Academy were kept in their dorms at almost all times, and they were supervised to say the least. Of course, Sid's sister, Claire, was obviously worried about his safety once he had been let go, and he was grateful to her. Honestly, when had he allowed himself to become so soft? Originally, when he envisioned being the Eminence in Shadow, his now surname the DeathStroke, he never would have thought that he'd have any sort of meaningful relationships, at least not any to the point where he actually cared. Not like he needed to. After all, these were strong and capable individuals. It's not like they actually needed him around. But somewhere along the way, his heart just opened up to them. Not so much so to the point where he'd be at their beck and call. No. If his sister ever got kidnapped by a bunch of high-level thugs, he'd probably leave her to it, expecting her to break herself free. But in the worst-case scenario, if she just had to be saved, he'd be there at a moment's notice. One thing was for sure, the regime were definitely up to something big. Something big enough that even a situation like this couldn't divert their attention. He'd have to look into it, but for now, finding Alexia was key. As he arrived back to his dorm, he would be greeted by an old friend. It was Alpha. She was sitting on the bed, and she had even brought lunch. Well, to be more specific, dinner, since it took him so long to get out. Alpha would chastise him for getting rounded up in this mess, and for even getting involved with the likes of Alexia anyway. Of course, Kagenou would explain that it was all towards the mission, and he would get a briefing on what they had been up to. Ever since they had left, they had been stationed in the various provinces, going deep undercover, from the seas of Atlantis to the lands of the Themyscira province, and even journeying outside of Midgar a little bit. They had actually managed to make a lot of connections and bring in more individuals into Shadow Garden in the meantime. Their bases of operations were starting to flourish, and they were beginning to learn more about this cult of Diablos. A lot was now starting to become clear, especially when it came to the records about the Great War. A war that was simply referred to as the Great War. It's something that was more vague than anything else. Yes, there were still people who remembered the war, but it was from so long ago. To be specific, the war had taken place a little over 40 years ago when it finally concluded. And ever since, it was safe to assume that those who did remember the warring times, it was so jarring to say the least that hardly anyone chose to talk about it. But that was when the reform came into play. There seemed to be a world before the war and the world after. It's what happened during that had Kagenou really concerned. But for now, their attentions would be focused on Alexia and getting her back home as soon as possible. For Kagenou, he was going to be taking point in this expedition. Shadow Garden simply had one task: to keep all of the unnecessary parties out of his way. As for Alexia, she found herself hostage to a mad scientist who was constantly drawing upon her blood. He kept going on and on about her blood being a special blood unlike any other, that through her family carried the blood of heroes, and that new gods could be given birth. Of course, Alexia had no idea of knowing what these new gods were. She knew that her family lineage came from powerful heroes. However, It was believed that over time the power would dissipate from generation to generation. Even now, Alexia and her sister Iris were proof of this very notion. Iris was believed to have received the blessing of their bloodline, which is why she was as powerful as she was, while Alexia, although powerful, didn't hold a candle to her sister. And it was believed that with more children that came with each bloodline in particular, the increased number of individuals with the distinct ability to reach this level of power would slowly dissipate, unless, of course, powerful members were to be married into the bloodline. Maybe it could revitalize the genes, keep it going. But of course, all of that was just speculation. For Alexia, she knew that she'd eventually have to break herself free. And thankfully enough, the Mad Doctor in particular gave her the opportunity she was looking for. For inside of her holding cell, there was also another creature. Something that appeared to be mutated and cursed, obviously being pumped with whatever it was that the scientists had in store. Feeling as though the walls were closing in on him, and as many of the secret hideouts of the cult were starting to be hit by Shadow Garden all at once, desperate times called for desperate measures. So desperate, in fact, that the mutated monster in question started to take shape into its next evolution, turning into something truly vile. A large, hulking monster that killed the scientist in question and freed her from her restraints before heading upside to go on a rampage. Under the cover of night, there appeared to be nothing but chaos within the capital. Iris was coordinating with Grid. Of course, Grid didn't have just one body. The cyborg was actually a host of many bodies. In fact, his primary body was one that he kept hidden, and instead he used multiple duplicates of himself to operate at any given time. So, Grid could be in the capital, he could be in all the provinces, as well as being offshore with the Justice League. All at once, in the midst of the chaos and the destruction, Iris would head out to confront the oncoming monster, with the likes of Laura, Helena, and Jessica by her side. All of them were particularly gifted warriors in their own right, and they would all make fine knights for the 12 Knights of Round. This was a chance to show what they could do. The four of them, their collective power, it should have been more than enough to quell the situation. And Grid was providing any assistance he could, through cameras, through surveillance, anything of that nature, as well as keeping everything monitored and recorded as future studying material for the League to see how they were able to perform in the midst of a crisis. As for Sid in question, he already knew a good place to look. It just came naturally to him. Before long, he would eventually find the underground catacombs to which Alexia were attempting to escape, and where she came face to face with her would-be of a betrothed, Xenon. You're here? Alexia asked, as she took hold of the sword in her hand. It was rusted and not much good for anything, but still, it was better to have some weapon than nothing. Things haven't quite gone as I had wanted them to, Alexia. But, in the end, all good things will come to pass. And, unfortunately enough, I can't allow you to leave this place. You're far too valuable. And what would you know about value? I know a great deal. I know that what's in your blood is quite valuable. That's what the old coot kept going on and on about. There's nothing special about my blood. Nothing special about me. You'd have been better off going after my older sister. Or wait, Perhaps you were too scared of challenging her. Perhaps you didn't think yourself strong enough, so you thought coming after the little sister would be the much better idea. Truly the makings of a coward if I'd ever seen one. Oh, don't get it misconstrued. Your sister is indeed powerful, so much so that we have to take the proper precautions. But with you, there's no such need. The blood is talented enough, but you're nothing special at all. You're quite ordinary. Outside of your DNA, you are worthless. Well, allow me to erase you from my worthless existence. Alexia would charge at Xenon as they both engaged in a flurry of swordplay. Of course, just as to be expected, her skill was entirely ordinary. But that wasn't the right way to describe it. Alexia was never the sword talent her sister was. She never had the power either. All she had was style and skill. For Alexia, she couldn't, what's the right way of putting it? If you gave her ingredients, she couldn't make you a 5-star meal, but she could make a 3. She could make the perfect 3. But Iris had the capability of taking 3 ingredients and turning it into a 7-star dish. And that's just when you gave her the bare minimum. But when you gave her a full kitchen, a full set of utensils and ingredients to work with, well, the potential for what she could create was absolutely limitless. She was born with talent and power, a rare combination. For Alexia, she had the talent, but she wasn't talented enough. She had power, but she wasn't powerful enough. It was that word, enough. The word enough was the bane of her existence, because it didn't matter what she did. Quite simply, it was never enough. And so much so, the fight proved to be a living embodiment of her existence. Because she was good, but she was never good enough. As she found herself defeated, with Xenon looming over her, the sound of footsteps echoing through the chambers could be heard. As a figure clad in black, save for only a mask that was blackened on one side of its face, no eye at all. The other, a shimmering orange, through which there was one visor that a crimson eye could be seen. A man clad in black, and a face half stricken in the darkness, Xenon remarked. So, you are the miscreant who's been attacking our would-be bases, though I doubt you could have gained much from it. Attacking on the weak, that is only but the moves of the weak. For me, it makes no difference. A small base, a big base, a fortress, a castle. They will all fall the same. What brings you about? Who are you? I'm no one special. At least, not to you, since this will be the first and the last time we will ever meet or have conversation. So by all means, go ahead and ask whatever you like. The knowledge will suit you ill. You wish to speak vague and throw idle threats. You know what they say about stones and glass houses. Yes, and I'm standing with a big-ass stone, and all you're casting is dust. You can't even form a pebble. Although, perhaps if you spit in it a little, you can make a mud ball if you're lucky. I see that our miscreant is wearing even bigger breeches than before. Who are you? I am the shadow that hunts the shadows. I am the justice that exposes the sin. I am the Eminence in shadow, the one who carries forth his justice through the blade. I am the DeathStroke. The DeathStroke. Fine title, absolutely worthless, but still, A for effort. Your words are complimentary, Xenon. So what is the meaning of all this? Why have you gone after Princess Alexia? Because she is quite useful to my organization. Your organization. So I presume that you are the leader of the cult of Diablos? That makes my job a lot easier. You misunderstand. It is as much my organization as it is my brothers and my sisters. We are all the organization, and we are one. The cult of Diablos. The cult of Diablos. Catchy. So what are you after then? And you think that I would tell you that willingly? I mean, you're confident, aren't you? Let's be clear. One way or another, only one of us is walking out of this tunnel tonight. I already know who it's going to be. So, why don't we just put it all out on the line? No secrets. No need to hide. Says the one in a mask. You're not worthy to look at my face. Then you are not worthy to learn the truth of the cult of Diablos. If you want that, then show me who you are. Kagenou made sure that Alexia was standing behind him. Very well then, as you wish. He reached for his face and removed the mask, removing just enough to reveal to Zeno who he was facing. Of course, the young swordsman was shocked. He couldn't believe that of all people, him. So, maybe you weren't involved, but you've obviously been keeping secrets. And this is a big one. Does your sister know what you're up to? Perhaps I should pay her a visit next, after I'm done with you, of course. If you're anything like her, or if she's anything like you, well, he'll be better to hear the screams of a pretty girl than that of a bitch-made boy. Oh yes, I can see it now. Having her wrapped in chains, stripped, removed of all of her dignity. I can think of a lot of fun things I can do with her. Can't you imagine it? Every waking second, I can get all in that skin. There's no telling what her blood can yield. Not quite as potent as royalty, but still quite effective. And she's quite a looker. I believe we'll have a wonderful time, don't you think? Kagenou said nothing as he put his mask back on. You done talking? 'Cause, with all due respect, I'm probably going to go deaf if I have to keep listening to you rabble. Then draw your sword. With that, The two of them would engage in combat once more, as Xenon engaged with the DeathStroke. They seemed almost evenly matched. At least, that's how it would appear. For Xenon, he fought with the Bushin style, multiple fighting styles, using every tactic that was ever given to him. But as for the DeathStroke, his movements were, you could say that they were ordinary, but that wouldn't do them justice. It was the height of perfection. Perfect movement. Not a single swing wasted. Every counter, every attack. It was methodical. It was planned. Done beautifully. For Alexia, it was a fighting style that she truly admired. Before long, Kagenou would have the advantage, with Xenon on the retreat and knocked back onto his ass. Come on now. You said that this was going to be the end of me, and yet I'm still standing. I know. Perhaps you're not giving it your all. There's probably still more to this that you're not revealing, huh? You cheeky bastard. You want to know the truth so bad? Fine, I'll tell you. Miss Royalty over there, her family, they have blood from a legendary clan of heroes. They have long since been forgotten, but the eminence of their power, it still resides within them. You could say that it's like a match that has yet to be set aflame. But when you find the right way to do so, you achieve something truly extraordinary. Power, not just any power. Power of the new gods. The new gods. If they're old, how can they be new? They are new because the world that they created was new. Even if they are gone, this is the world that they inhabit. This was their domain. The blood of the new gods flows through the Midgar family. And through their blood, we will give birth to our own God. Your own God. It has been foretold. His birth will bring forth a new dawn, a dawn in darkness. We almost won in the war, but we didn't have enough time, and we were defeated by the League. So, the cult of Diablos is the ones that fought against the Justice League in the Great War. No wonder why I can't find it in any books or articles in the public eye. They've probably expunged it, tried to keep it under wraps. They probably have no idea that the cult is even back. So what? You guys weren't strong enough to kill the League, so you're going to get a baby to do it? Make all the jokes you want. But the child that will be birthed from the cult of Diablos will bring forth a new era. He will be the last god, the god of darkness. He will bring forth the true apocalypse. Is that so? Well, I've truly heard it all. A wannabe cult looking to pin all of their hopes on a miracle baby. Truly pathetic. I'll show you what's pathetic. Xenon would take a vial of pills and crush it into his mouth. His body began to augment and change as a powerful aura flowed from him. This is just a fraction of what the new God will be able to do. He will be the one to usher in true terror. We will serve under him loyally, and we will take this land back in his name. Oh, your God hasn't even been born, and yet he has a name? You want to tell me that too? Or will you have it be a secret surprise at the baby shower? Make all of the idle jokes you want. You aren't even worthy to speak his name. But, since this is the end for you all, perhaps I will leave you with one parting gift. The name of the new God. He will be, I don't really give a damn. 'Cause, let me fill you in on a little secret, my friend. Kagenou's aura would start to emanate from his body. On the outside, fighting through the streets of the capital, Iris, Laura, Jessica, and Helena battled against a large brooding monster that was roaming about from block to block. Laura would use her impressive physical strength as she flew into the sky and gut-checked the beast, while Jessica would use the power of the yellow lantern ring to build constructs to keep it in place. All while Helena would use her skills in archery to shoot at the monstrous beast, while Iris would continue to hack and slash away with her sword. The monster was finally taken down by a mysterious fifth party, none other than the Shadow herself, Alpha. Could you all not see that this beast was in pain? Her suffering needed to be brought to an end. The work of the cult of Diablos. The cult of Diablos? Iris would ask, as she, along with the other girls, all stood together, not sure if this new entity was friend or foe. I give you this one warning. Do not get in our way. Who are you? We are Shadow Garden. As Alpha would disappear, the ground would start to rumble and shake under them. For Grid, he could feel that there was a strong magical pressure moving about underneath them all. He was trying to triangulate and calculate just how powerful of an entity that it could be to cause this much movement. In terms of a category, no way. A category 7. That can't even be. They're gonna want to know about this. In the underground, Kagenou would make his presence felt. You know, I've never liked people like you. And it's not because of the attitude or the arrogance or because of that foul mouth of yours. Truly, you need a bar of soap. No, it's none of that. It's simply because I hate those that rely on borrowed power and try to claim themselves to be almighty. No. You are as far from the title of almighty as the moon is from the earth. I consider it blasphemy. There was once a boy who wanted to achieve power. He trained day in and day out. He tried to become as strong as he could, and yet, ultimately, he knew that he couldn't have the power to overcome something nuclear, something atomic, a force of nature that would evaporate him into the nothingness. You want to know who I truly am? I am a boy that died, but I was given a second chance at life. I was reborn far beyond what I could have ever been capable of. Everything I have been given is a gift that I will use to the fullest extent. My justice will be absolute because my power is far more than anything you can comprehend. I am the shadow. I am the DeathStroke. My justice is eternal, and my power is atomic. In one fell swoop, in one slash, Zenon would be cut down, but not through the blade, but through the sheer aura of power far more than what he could comprehend. So often when you climb a mountain, you think you've reached the peak. But for Zenon, he was given a rather important lesson that unfortunately would be his last. For every peak that you reach in life, all you have reached is yet another valley, and there is always another mountain to climb, one that surpasses where you already came from. And if you cannot realize that, then you will never reach the top. After a rather impressive light show and an output of magical power that set all of the charts off, Alexia was left there, left with her own self. She attempted to find the man in black, but as she looked, he was gone. The only one left would be her sister, who, through that beam of light, would find where she was, and for a brief moment thought that it was actually Alexia who had done it. Of course, there would be time for questions on that later. For now, she was just happy that her sister was home safe and sound. There would have to be some cover-up, of course. You can't just let it be known that a former noble and student of the academy was a part of some evil, dark, sinister cult that was harvesting blood from the royal family to try to create what they call a new god, or whatever it was. But it did play into the fears that Iris had. There was something going on. Potential corruption? Should she get the League involved? No. The League only got involved in matters that were of the utmost. This would have to be left to the 12 Knights of Round. It was time to call them to order. A meeting needed to be held. Whoever this cult was, this Shadow Garden, all of it would be brought to light. About 3 days later, Alexia would return back to school. She was sitting behind the class building along with Sid. The two of them had some reconciling to do with their relationship and all. Except now she wasn't entirely sure of what to say. She definitely had a new perspective on things, of how she felt. A new motivation, but from where she didn't know. The man in black. It was obvious that whoever he was, Zenon knew him, but she never got to see his face, and Zenon never revealed his identity. So who could the man in black be? What was his endgame? Who truly was the DeathStroke? This concludes The Eminence in Shadow, No More Heroes. What if Sid Kagenou was DeathStroke? Season 1, Part 3. As always, if you enjoyed today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that's to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned tomorrow as we continue with The Eminence in Shadow, No More Heroes. What if Sid Kagenou was Deathstroke? Season 1, Part 4. Also, I have taken a brief reprieve when it comes to doing the What If Naruto Was Swamp Thing series, at least for today. But for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we will be doing parts 6, 7, and 8, which will be the final 3 parts for Season 2 of What If Naruto Was Swamp Thing. So we will resume double uploads tomorrow. But that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.